Thank you very much for being here. I hope that you all are wandering around finding these companies. We've got some terrific plays out here. I'm not going to talk about companies, okay? I'm going to talk about other things. It's a bigger, higher level sort of discussion. I've been doing this newsletter thing for a little over 15 years with Agora Financial. One of the branches of Agora is St. Paul Research. You'll also find me at Investor Intel. And Bill Bonner, who founded Agora, left and set up his own group called Bonner Private Research on Substack. So you find me there too sometimes. With that, I'm just going to kick right into it because we have 20 minutes. And I want you to think back for the last 30 years, 1991 to today. You know, we had a heck of a run. You know, the Soviet Union collapsed. It was sort of like once in history kind of events. You know, Russia, Soviet. You know, Soviet broke up. Russia came into the world. We had this unipolar moment where the United States was, big and the colossus, striding across the globe. Petrodollar was the world's reserve currency. The USA globalized its economy. I say that with bitterness in my mouth. And we financialized and deindustrialized the economy. Everything that made the U.S. what it was, they basically tried to, unravel all that, plus a lot of military expeditions. And I say that as a U.S. Navy active and reserve 30-year guy on the retired list and everything else. Been there, done that, and saw it up close and personal. We made a lot of political and economic mistakes along the way. I throw these photos here just to represent that, the government is not run by these people. People are policy, as Ronald Reagan said. These people appoint other people, and they make policy, and that's what you get. We are where we are because of a whole lot of mistakes along the way. We could talk about it all day, but we don't have all day. So we'll go to the next slide. The drill on the road to national ruin: overspending, inflation, and debt. There you go. This is where the U.S. is right now. And it was all precarious. Along came COVID. It's all even more precarious. And then the fickle fates of fortune came along with Ukraine. It's not that Ukraine is causing all the problems. It's that the problems were there. And Ukraine, I suppose, we're going to look back, from a historical perspective, years from now. Ukraine was the pin that popped the bubble. It was the device that pushed over the tower. This is sort of a macabre map of Ukraine. The bottom part is the Republic of Novorossiya, which is, that's what it's all about. I mean, the Ukrainians have a thing. The Ukrainians think they're special. The Russians think they're special. They've been dealing with this for, 1,500 years. It is a thing. It is not my thing because I'm not Ukrainian and I'm not Russian. But, I'm just saying that their thing has become the whole rest of the world's thing. And I hate to be flip about it because it's such a serious situation. But it is the pin that's popping the bubble. The Russian special military operation is in Ukraine. What are the Russian objectives? I'm just going to go real quick. They want to protect the Russians in Donbass. Lots of reasons why. They say they've been getting killed for 8 years. And, we won't get into the details. No NATO for Ukraine. Well, as somebody who, spent 30 years in the Navy, I never thought it was a good idea to expand NATO, but we did it anyhow. It wasn't me making policy. Russia wants to reduce the military threat. Anybody who understands Russia would understand that comment. And then they want to denazify the Ukraine. There is this whole philosophy of, there's Nazis in Ukraine. It's not for me to say. The Russians believe it, but really the unspoken part of it is the orange parts on the map, the Donbass Basin and that area in the Sea of Azov. Some of the incredible coal reserves, incredible iron ore reserves, a whole bunch of other minerals, and a whole lot of oil and gas underneath there. So there's a strategic land grab involved in all this. Not that Russia's 11 time zones. Yeah, they need a little bit more. But it's the pin that's popping the bubble. And the talk is not about the special military operation. It's about what the war has triggered, which gets me to the point that we got sanctions. I mentioned this morning in my gold talks up there. I threw a few things out there. Russia did its thing, invaded Ukraine, call it whatever you want to call it. The tanks rolled across the border. The West went and seized Russian foreign reserves. Well, the thing is that a lot of Russia's state wealth is in gold, but a lot of the rest of it, they're very mad about that. It's sort of like, wait a minute, you have the world's reserve currency, but you take it from us when you don't like us? Well, yeah. They barred Russia from SWIFT, which is the interbanking system. Well, guess what? Russia saw that one coming. They've set up their own alternative SWIFT system, and it works. We've seized overseas state and personal and business assets of the oligarchs. So we took your money, take your yacht, take your mansion. I've said this to some people. I don't know any oligarchs. I don't think I do. I've never met any, but we do have this thing, due process, Fourth Amendment, taking without, compensation. I mean, what is going on here? I mean, we don't like you, we're mad at you, we're going to take your money. It's like, wait a minute, what kind of world is that? What kind of government is that? What kind of just, we talk about dictators over there. Wait a minute, we're just stealing people's stuff. I didn't see any oligarchs driving any tanks into Ukraine, so, maybe why are we taking their yachts? Ban the sale of goods to Russia? Okay, well, guess what? Russia is about as close to an autarkical economy as you can get. Oil, gas, minerals, food, technology sector. They have an aerospace sector that's fabulous. I mean, we spent 10 years riding Russian rockets to get to the International Space Station, half of which is built by Russia. So don't tell me they don't have a technology sector. And then we're going to ban certain exports from Russia. Yeah, how's that working out? Because a lot of Russian materials are critical to the global supply. Oil, gas, fertilizer. Maybe you've seen neon gas. Can't do silicon chips without neon gas. Can't do silicon chips without sapphire substrate. Where do you think 65% of the world's sapphire substrate comes from? Russia. Hello. Can't build Boeing jets without titanium. Where does the titanium come from? Guess where? There you go. Now, a couple of charts real quick. Look at energy. Ever since price of gas is up, price of oil is up. Since it's gone in. Again, it's not Ukraine that did this. It's Ukraine was the bubble that popped. That natural gas was already going up. That oil was already going up. But we've really, really pulled out the shotgun and blown both barrels into each, one into each foot with the oil and gas situation. And then, we mentioned this before in the earlier talk. Look at food, rising prices. I just throw wheat and urea, which is another form, nitrogen fertilizer. Again. When you look at fertilizer, your nitrogen-based fertilizer, you're really talking about energy. Where's nitrogen come from? It comes from the air. How do you get nitrogen out of the air? A lot of energy, and you make your urea out of it, and then you make fertilizer out of it. You have to make explosives out of it. But who are the swing producers for wheat, urea? Russia and Ukraine, but Ukraine's under military attack at this point. So who's being punished, with our sanctions? Well, guess who? Make this visual. I believe in charts, or I believe in a slideshow that uses, pictures and big print. Having said that, we're going to come to some lists of stuff here. If you studied economics in college, which maybe you did and maybe you didn't, I think one of the worst things you can do to a person is, study economics the modern way. But one of the things that is true is that prices are set at the margin, right? The last unit is what sets the price of something, right? That's basic stuff, Russia's the marginal supplier of so many things. So the West sanctions Russia, and Russia says, as I say in my little slideshow, hey, hold my beer. And then they turn around and say, we want you to pay for our natural gas in rubles, or you can give us gold. We're like, wait a week, we're not going to do that. And they say, yes, you are, or we're going to turn the valves. Well, downstream, it hasn't happened quite yet, but it's in the mix. They're going to say you're going to pay for oil and all the other stuff we export: nickel, copper, palladium, fertilizer, wheat, and that especially applies to what we call unfriendly countries to Russia, which is like the United States, Canada, whatever. Russia will facilitate exports to friendly countries like Hungary. Hungary's saying, hey, we don't want to, we're just going to work with you, and we're not going to help support anybody, hurting you. And Russia says, fine, you can keep having the gas, but they limit exports to unfriendly countries. They shut the valves off to Poland about 2 weeks ago. And then just the other day, when Finland says, yeah, we think we're going to join NATO, they said, fine. They threw the switch and shut off 10% of Finland's electric power that came from Russia. So, this is just the beginning. We're just at the beginning of this. Stand by. Meanwhile, when you have wreck the credibility of your dollar, wreck the credibility of your banking system, of your treasuries, of your willingness to protect people's property rights. When I say people's, I mean governments, sovereign governments as well. When you wreck that, people around the world look around and say, wait a minute, can we work with these people? Or maybe we should back away a little bit. So other countries are beginning to sync up their interests and their pricing with, guess who? Russia. Who's doing it? Well, how about OPEC plus? Isn't it interesting that OPEC, all the different OPEC countries are saying, yeah, we know that you would like to have more oil, but we have we can't do it. We like the price where it is. Well, okay, so we pay the price of what it is. India is doing the same thing with wheat. India just banned exports of wheat the other day. Again, they're saying it's a iffy world, and we're not about to have hunger in India because we don't have any wheat. So people will work things out one way or another, but when you see big major policy decisions like that didn't just happen. That's all Western sanctions blowing back. Meanwhile, Russia, China, many other countries are de-dollarizing. It makes me wonder about how, the market's crashing. Well, who's selling? Well, a lot of foreign holders are selling. They're saying, I think I'm going to take my money out of Wall Street and out of treasuries and what have you, and I think I'm going to take that money and go do something else with it. Whatever it is, they don't want to leave it out there where Janet Yellen and her Treasury Department, or where Joe Biden and his Justice Department can seize it, or in Britain or in Canada, other places. This is my perception of what we see, and we are. Sanctions are already damaging, global trade. I mean, energy shortages, energy prices are rising. Europe says, well, we're going to replace Russian natural gas, to which I say, well, really, from where? Because I live in Pennsylvania. My house is 9,000 feet above the Marcellus Shale. I know a few things about this. I've sat on drill rigs. I know what this stuff is. And pretty much every molecule of natural gas in the world in large volumes is forward sold. So I don't know where Europe thinks is going to get all this gas, although there are people in the U.S. say, oh, we'll be happy to supply you with natural gas. Yeah, and my natural gas bill is going to triple for heating my house, so it's going to come and kind of nail me. Let's say, well, we're going to replace Russian oil. I mean, Europe says we're going to replace Russian oil in a year. I said, what are you smoking? That's crazy. It takes years to ramp up extra output. It just doesn't. You don't just turn a valve. Don't work that way. I mean, meanwhile, where are you going to get that oil from? The Saudis are already saying, we're maxed out. We have production problems. We have geologic problems. We can't do anymore. Venezuela, I mean, they could ramp up. Yeah, if you give them 15 years. After it took them 15 years to ramp down, and then meanwhile we got the Biden administration, which is absolutely against fossil fuels. They hate fossil fuels. They despise them. They just canceled offshore lease sales. There's no demand for offshore leases. They have no idea what they're talking about. I mean, if you've ever worked in the oil industry, you understand how totally. I don't want to say stupid, because somebody smart made that decision. It is very cynical and very cruel, and it signals the whole rest of the world that we don't care about the fossil fuel energy future, which is basically how the whole U.S. and Canada, whole North America is built. The whole world's built around. It took 150 years to get here, but somehow people think we're going to change it all in 5. And then replacing Russian refined products. Oh man. Don't get me talking about diesel and jet fuel. I mean, in the U.S., we've been closing down, refineries that do diesel. There's massive shortages of diesel across the U.S., especially on the East Coast. But, farms and factories, and the world runs on diesel. I mean, if you've ever heard of an author named Václav Smil, he writes fabulous books about energy and whatever. Just, The Way the World Works, I think, is his most recent book. A lot of that, though, is, Russia was one of the key marginal suppliers of diesel to the world, so that we sanctioned them, so not anymore. Other sanctions blowback. I mean, the writing is already on the wall, my friends. The food crisis is here. It looms. Look at fertilizer, wheat, other grains. I'm not telling you anything you don't know if you have ever been to a grocery store in the last, let's say, 3 months. Double the price for bacon. Price of milk going up. Everything. Another thing people don't think about, global air traffic and air cargo is vastly disrupted by sanctions. We sanctioned Russia. I said, you can't fly your airplanes here, can't fly Aeroflot here anymore. Okay, great. Well, you can't fly over Russia. Well, that means that a whole lot of airline routes around the world now have to go this way or that way, to get where they want to go, which adds time and cost, scheduling delays and everything. Couple that with the cargo ship jam-ups. You've seen the pictures. I didn't have to throw a slide of cargo ships offshore. You've all seen. What's going on. It's a legacy of COVID, but now add issues with Russian cargo. Russia has a lot of ships. They export a lot of cargo on their ships, but the bankers won't finance it. The insurers won't insure it. A lot of places won't allow Russian ships to dock. A lot of dock workers won't unload a Russian ship. Okay, great. Well, where are you going to get the stuff from that you want if the ships can't even make their transit? Meanwhile, all these rising prices for energy and food are embedded into the economy now. Inflation has become structural. And inflation is just a whole nother thing, I think, that undermines the credibility and the utility of the dollar as a unit for trade and as a means to preserve wealth over time. I mean, do you want to put your money into dollars that are maybe inflating at the target 2% that the Federal Reserve bragged about for decades? Or do you want to put your money into dollars that are inflating at, so they say, 8.5%, which is really more like 17% when you do the shadow statistics? I mean, like, why do I want to buy those? Monopoly money, So it's a gloomy picture looking forward. Other angles on the whole sanction thing, over and above just price and availability of stuff. What we're seeing and what we are going to see around the world is a lot of old frozen conflicts are thawing out. Terrorism is also going to rise. There's a whole lot of new weapons, floating around the world. The West is distracted and it's in evident decline, measurable decline. So that cannot be good for business going forward. Certainly not in jurisdictions where some level of security is necessary to do business. International institutions are becoming ineffective. The West is preoccupied. I mean, when you can't trust the dollar, and you can't trust the government that backs the dollar, what good is the International Monetary Fund? What good is the World Bank? I mean, in some respects, when you look at there's a war on, and what's the United Nations doing with it? So international institutions are becoming ineffective. New alliances are going to form up as people back away, as countries back away from the U.S., from NATO, from the West in general. They're going to form their own teams. They're going to say, well, you guys, the West, you blew it in the Middle East, you blew it in Afghanistan, you don't have a clue what you're doing in Ukraine. You're letting Europe get just wiped out with high energy costs. You're creating a food crisis, and the food crisis there affects wheat importing, food importing countries. I mean, without Russian and Ukrainian wheat, Egypt is going to be in turmoil, very soon. I mean, Egypt, 100 and some million people, they get 90% of their wheat is imported. I mean, they have a problem. Gets back to the first slide that U.S. New security architecture. The Russians call it a correlation of forces. That's an old Soviet term. If you know any Russians, if you know any like Soviet Russians who are like military trained, they always talk about the correlation of forces. If you ever took an engineering course, you may have taken a course in statics and dynamics, stresses here and apply a stress, measure a strain, this is where the forces go, and vectors and all this stuff. That's what they mean, the correlation of forces. There's combat power over here, and there's combat power over there, and the combat power equal means that the world has relative peace, but when one side or the other increases or decreases and throws the correlation of forces off balance, that's bad for the world. And that's a Soviet concept, but it actually makes a lot of sense. There's a new security architecture making up being created in the world, and the new correlation of forces. We don't know where it's going to go. We don't know where it's going to go because people are watching what's happening and they're making their own decisions. The unipolar moment for the U.S., NATO, the West, whatever, is over. I mean, it ended, I think, when when the first tank rolled over the border and the first sanction, blew back on Russia. Other power centers are on the rise. I mean, Russia has formed an alliance with China. I mean, in the West, we don't get that news. They don't tell us that here in the West. When I say they, corporate media. I mean, but if you look behind it, if you look deeper into it, you'll see that Russia and China. I mean, they're doing joint military drills up to the nuclear level. So they're combining their space forces. Here's Russia, rich in resources. Here's China with lots of people, lots of technology, lots of demand. They've formed it up. And then other places in the world, India is going to go its own way. I mean, India, they're going to find their own path. Brazil, South America, I think we can see something going on down there. I would recommend everybody to dust off your old copy of Halford McKinder or Nicholas Spikeman and their books in the early 1900s, 1930s about the heartland theory, rimland, world island theories. It gets into big stuff, but it's a useful tool. And finally, what can investors do? Here we go. Okay, well, again, I'm not going to give you stock tips. I can do that on the floor, and I did that this morning. But you want to own real stuff in safe jurisdictions. The rain is going to fall upon the just and the unjust. I mean, I like physical metals, precious metals, physical and such. Industrial metals, keep going. Energy, oil, gas, uranium, drillers, services, ag is great, and real technology, not like Facebook and Netflix and stuff. I mean, real companies that make real things with real factories with smart people inside. And that's where you want to be looking in the time to come. And with that, I end it at my 20-minute mark. I thank you all for your attention. I really appreciate you being here.